And isn't it great what they're doing? Isn't it great and definitely not at all illegal or profoundly corrupt for the president to put someone with billions of dollars in government contracts personally in charge of deciding what happens to government contracts? I mean, hopefully the State Department isn't planning on parking its $400 million worth of armored Tesla production units like under a walnut tree. or like out in the rain. But otherwise, that's obviously a super kosher use of taxpayer funds and not at all $400 million worth of self-dealing by the president's top campaign donor to whom he has handed the keys to the kingdom. Definitely not ripping us all off to pay themselves, right? This was the protest today outside the headquarters of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau in Washington, which Donald Trump and Elon Musk have not just insisted must die, they insist they have killed it themselves, just on their own say-so. They didn't go to Congress to say, let's defund this agency. They didn't go to the courts to, challenge the legality of the agency. They just announced it was closed. They announced that it was over. Now, Elon Musk's social media company, what used to be called Twitter, just announced that they're going to set up an online payment system on Twitter with Visa. An online payment operation like that is something that would be regulated by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Other online payment schemes have recently resulted in thousands of Americans losing their entire life savings and never getting their money back. So, yeah, that's the sort of thing that the CFPB exists to regulate and shut down when they're ripping people off. But you know what? If the CFPB doesn't exist, that presumably will make it easier for Elon Musk to do whatever he wants to people who he signs up for his new payment system on X, or Twitter. He has announced the death of the CFPB. It is not up to him. Americans today showed up there once again to defend it. Honk for CFPB. Hands off our CFPB. This was today in Washington. People showing up in person to defend the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau on a very cold, very snowy day in Washington, D.C. Also today, another big protest outside the Department of Education, also in downtown D.C. The confirmation hearing for Donald Trump's nominee for Education Secretary Linda McMahon, the wrestling executive. Her confirmation hearing is tomorrow. There's been reporting that the Trump administration's orders have already been drafted directing Linda McMahon as Education Secretary to start shutting down the department, to start the abolition of the Education Department as soon as she is sworn in. Because of that reporting, I think in part, people were out there today in advance of her confirmation hearing tomorrow saying, no way, we will defend the U.S. Department of Education in this country.
Oh, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I wish I was here under different circumstances. But I'm pissed off. Our public education in America is under attack, not by budget cuts, not by policy debates, but by the people who want to tear it down.
I think that Elon Musk needed better math teachers because he says he's looking for savings by going after the $4 a day we send to make sure students have lunch every day, instead of looking at the $8 million a day that go to Elon Musk in federal contracts.
What we're fighting against is Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, and President Donald Trump, who we all know the scam that this is about, which is taking our corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. And doing that on the backs of our children, on the backs of educators, on the backs of our public school system. And we're here to say hell no.
We are not going to let them to destroy the Department of Education. Department of Education provides funding for 26 million kids who are living in high poverty areas all over this country. And we have the radical idea that maybe poor kids deserve the same quality education that rich kids do.
It was today outside the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C. Regular people and people who work at the Education Department, and as you saw there, a whole ton of Democratic members of Congress and senators saying, hands off, saying, hell no, we're going to defend this part of who we are as a country. We're going to defend this part of our government. It's not legal for you to declare it shut down, and we're not going to let you shut it down. More than 60% of the country says, do not shut down the Department of Education. Trump and his top campaign donor, Elon Musk, say they're going to shut it down anyway. Well, it looks like it is not going to happen without a fight. And, you know, we are seeing members of Congress turn out at these protests, at these rallies and demonstrations. This hasn't had as much attention, but it's also worth knowing that Democratic members of Congress and senators have also been convening town halls when they can get back to their districts. Like this one in Connecticut, convened by Democratic Senators Chris Murphy and Richard Blumenthal. Look at this one. This is another town hall that was just convened in Kentucky. Look at this. Louisville, Kentucky, convened by the local Democratic Party. Look at the kind of turnout they are getting of people who want to fight against what Trump is doing. Again, this is in Kentucky, just a few days ago in Louisville. Congress has been in session in person for these first 3 weeks that Trump has been in office. So in a lot of cases, that means individual senators and members of the House, they can't get home to their districts yet. They've only been able to convene town halls thus far by phone, teletown halls, or in some cases by Zoom. But I want you to look at this. I don't know that this has been reported elsewhere, at least in aggregate, but I was shocked by these numbers today when we started looking this up today. Look at the numbers they're getting at these town halls. Congressman Jimmy Gomez from California says nearly 10,000 people, more than 9,800 people, called in from his district for his telephone town hall. He called a town hall on the phone, and 9,812 people from his district called in. Wow. Congressman Brendan Boyle from Pennsylvania, he just convened what he called an emergency town hall for his district in Pennsylvania. It had more than 10,000 people calling in. Congressman Greg Stanton, Democrat of Arizona, he says he had more than 13,000 people call into his town hall in Arizona. Kim Schreier is a Washington state congresswoman. Her office says 14,000 people in her district called into her town hall. Congresswoman Terry Sewell is from Alabama. Alabama, not exactly a bleeding heart blue state, right? Congresswoman Sewell says that when she convened a town hall last night, they had more than 20,000 people on the line from her district. More than 20,000 people in Alabama, in one congressional district in Alabama. Alabama voted for Trump by like a 30-point margin in the election in November. But you know what the largest employer is in Alabama? It's the Redstone Arsenal at Huntsville, Alabama. And every day, that is where 30 or 40,000 federal employees of various stripes go to work, or people whose jobs are funded by the federal government and its appropriations. That's the largest employer in the state of Alabama. You know what the second largest employer is in the state of Alabama? It's the University of Alabama at Birmingham, which, like all large research universities, has just been shot in both proverbial kneecaps, with Trump and Elon Musk unilaterally asserting with no notice and against the law that research facilities like UAB are about to have their funding dramatically and immediately cut with no warning. And those are like just the big cuts, like the existential cuts for a state like Alabama and its economy. Local news in places like Huntsville, Alabama this week are already reporting on smaller, lower profile cuts that are already sending local people just reeling.
Some Huntsville Utilities customers have been notified that their accounts have been debited, all due to one of President Trump's executive orders. Huntsville Utilities tells Fox 54 that some customers who receive grant money from the federal government through local community action agencies now need to pay that money back. This is a direct result of President Trump's executive order to rescind federal funding. And although a federal judge did block this order last month, today that judge found the Trump administration did not fully follow his order.
Accounts have been debited. They're just taking money out of people's accounts as part of their utility bill. Oh, Trump cut off all that money. That's been helping pay your utility bill, Alabama. And so now we're going to start taking all that money back. And by the way, you owe. You owe. You have to pay money more than you have been, not only for your additional bills. You have to pay back what Trump is no longer allowing to be spent. And that, Alabama utility customers finding, hundreds of dollars taken out of their account in the middle of winter, right? I mean, I guess it's a small story in the grand scheme of things, given what's going on in our whole country. But for people in Alabama, that's a real and immediate and hugely expensive thing that is very obviously Donald Trump's fault in a state that really supported him. So what's the impact of that, right? I mean, Republicans from Alabama, like Alabama Senator Katie Britt, have started to freak out publicly about what Trump and Musk dismantling the government is doing to her state specifically. Quote, Senator Britt was one of the first Republicans to raise concerns at home soon after the Trump administration directed the NIH to slash $4 billion in costs for medical research grantees. Senator Britt, whose state has received more than $518 million in NIH grants just for projects that are currently active there, tells a local news outlet that she will press Trump officials to take a, quote, smart, targeted approach to cuts so as to, quote, not hinder life-saving, groundbreaking research at high-achieving institutions like the University of Alabama at Birmingham. What do you think the odds are that she's right? That they're, what did she call it? That they're going to take a smart, targeted approach because they're trying hard not to hinder life-saving work. What do you think the odds are that she's right about that? Did I mention that 20,000 people, 20,000 Alabama residents just phoned into a town hall last night for their Democratic Congresswoman, Terry Sewell? Who do you think's got a better grasp on the stakes here for Alabama? Congresswoman Sewell dealing with 20,000 of her panicked constituents last night, or Katie Britt, who says, I'm sure they don't want to actually hurt us? In Kansas Republicans are now trying to salvage pieces of USAID, which was shut by Donald Trump and his top campaign donor, Elon Musk. They're trying to salvage pieces of USAID by moving those pieces into the agriculture department or someplace else that might survive, since Kansas farmers are taking the hit for millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of those USAID cuts already. In North Carolina, Republican Senator Ted Budd has decided to put his fingers in his ears and pretend it's not happening. Quote, Senator Ted Budd of North Carolina, whose state includes two of the largest recipients of NIH grants in Duke University and UNC Chapel Hill, said, quote, there's great research being done by all of our institutions. We need to protect that. Quote, I think the White House wants to protect that. Do they? Do you think they want that? Do you think that's why they just ordered devastating existential level cuts across the board immediately with no warning to all research institutions? It's because they want to protect that great research? Do you think that's why they did it? Senator Budd actually went so far as to say on the record that he, quote, agrees with Trump's cuts to universities and medical and scientific research. He agrees with it, and he is telling his constituents he agrees with these cuts. But, he's also sure that the Trump White House really, in their heart of hearts, wants to protect the universities and research facilities. And like UNC and Duke are going to be fine, right? And all the other huge employers in his state that get that kind of funding, that provide, I don't know, the whole foundation for his state's economy. He's just told his constituents he agrees with these cuts that are likely to put thousands of people out of work in North Carolina and destroy the foundation of that state's economy. He says he agrees with those cuts, but he also thinks, probably it's going to be fine. After all, they're good people. I'm sure their hearts are in the right place. Imagine being a Republican senator or member of Congress and trying to sell that Cybertruck full of horse hockey to your constituents. I'm sure it'll be fine. They're good people. Do you notice it's only Democratic members of Congress and Democratic senators who are holding these huge town halls? I wonder why Republicans don't want to talk to their constituents right now. I mean, and I got to say, it's not that talking to the constituents has been an easy thing for Democrats in these past 3 weeks. I mean, the Democrats are getting pushed by their constituents, too. They're getting pushed to do as much as possible, to do anything possible to stop Trump and what he's doing with Elon Musk. Here, for example, are Colorado residents turning up at the offices of Democrats John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennet, telling them, number one, vote no on all Trump cabinet appointments. Number two, deny unanimous consent to slow down the Senate. Number three, publicly oppose Musk's dismantling of the executive branch. Pushing these Democratic senators to push harder, to fight harder. That said, I said they're being tough. They did also bring cookies. Here's Virginia residents turning up at Senator Mark Warner's office, telling him, fight back, Senator Warner, fight harder. Here's Georgia residents turning up at John Ossoff's office in Georgia, telling him, Ossoff, fight back. Here's New Jersey residents at Senator Cory Booker's office, telling him, Senator Booker, the time to fight is now. Fight like hell. Here's California voters at the office of Senator Alex Padilla. Block, delay, obstruct, no excuses. Here's Hawaii voters at the offices of their senators, Brian Schatz and Mazie Hirono. Senate Democrats, blanket opposition. What's happening right now in politics, and politics is the way we get out of this disaster, right? What's happening right now in American politics is that Republicans are hiding from their constituents. Republican elected officials are hiding from their constituents, and when they do have to address them, they are trying to tell them that they're sure everything is going to be fine. They have read-only access to the Treasury payment system, I was told. I'm sure they want to protect our universities and our life-saving work and research. I'm sure of it. Republicans are hiding from their constituents, and when they have to talk to them, they're telling them, la, 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 I'm sure it's going to be fine, when clearly it is not going to be fine. Democrats are not hiding from their constituents. Democrats are being inundated with not just feedback from their constituents, but also with their constituents pushing them to do more, to fight harder. And this is a story that is all, therefore, heading in one direction. I got to tell you, we are expecting another big protest tomorrow in Washington, D.C. at the headquarters of the VA. We are hearing rumblings of big protests that are being planned targeting Elon Musk's companies, including not just Tesla, like we have already seen, but also his other companies. We've reached out to the State Department and to Tesla for comment tonight on those $400 million the State Department is planning on spending on armored Tesla production units. If we hear back from them on that, we'll be sure to let you know. But, you know, watch what's happening in the country and watch what effect it's happening on policy. And watch what effect it's happening on politics, because politics is how this will turn around. And tonight, case in point, in the United States Senate, Senate Democrats are going to hold the floor all night long, overnight, pulling out every stop they can to try to stop the bizarre and, to many people, terrifying nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to be health secretary. Democrats right now in the United States Senate are holding the floor, and they're going to hold it all night tonight. They are doing everything they can. They're doing everything they can as their constituents demand they must. A lot more to come tonight. Stay with us.
For the past 20 years, election monitoring groups, human rights organizations, and anti-corruption efforts have been funded in part by USAID, which has provided more than $2.6 billion to Russia. President Vladimir Putin has now ended USAID's programs, reportedly out of concern they interfere with elections by aiding opposition groups.
That was 2012. In 2012, 13 years ago, the Vladimir Putin government, Kremlin, expelled USAID from Russia. Now here we are 13 years later, and Donald Trump and Elon Musk's shutdown of USAID, shutdown of that entire agency, that of being celebrated by authoritarians everywhere. Russia called it a, quote, smart move. Hungary's dictatorial leader, Viktor Orban, hailed the shutdown, his allies saying they, quote, couldn't be happier. Here's how The Guardian headlined it, quote, authoritarian regimes around the world cheer on dismantling of USAID. Nicaragua's state media, controlled by the family of the president, declared that Trump turned off the faucet for what they labeled terrorists. Venezuela's interior minister announced plans to investigate the agency, saying the government's opposition was paid by USAID. But it's not just that authoritarian leaders around the world and dictators around the world are celebrating this move by Donald Trump. The damage done by shutting this agency is turning out to be an ongoing and now newly serious disaster. When Elon Musk posted to his hundreds of millions of followers online, quote, USAID is a criminal organization, that turns out to have had consequences. You know who's been more than happy to pick that up and run with it? Check this out. This is from the Guardian newspaper's Andrew Roth today. Quote, right-wing and autocratic governments have their knives out for USAID, demanding data on grant recipients from Elon Musk and threatening employees and grant recipients with investigations and prison. USAID has long been a thorn in the side of governments in the region who have railed against U.S. support for pro-democracy and civil society movements. Well, now, local leaders, for the first time, see an ally in Washington that will back a crackdown on USAID and its beneficiaries as if they are criminals. In Georgia, the government, not the state of Georgia, the country of Georgia, the government there has opened a mysterious case after the prime minister accused the U.S. Embassy, USAID, and other American-backed organizations of, quote, acting in a coordinated manner against the Georgian people and the Georgian state. In Slovakia, the prime minister there published a letter to Elon Musk in which he asked Elon Musk to share information about NGOs and the media and individual journalists who have worked in his country. In Russia, the State Duma speaker said the government should request a list of people who received funding from USAID and that they should be made to, quote, publicly confess and repent on Red Square. Quote, if they've declared USAID an enemy organization, let them provide the names. Congress will send us the list and we'll hand it over to the FSB. One current USAID employee tells The Guardian, quote, this is Trump's Afghanistan withdrawal. Cutting and running and leaving people who have faithfully and consistently worked for the USA and our interests being left behind to be jailed or worse. Joining us now is Congressman Jim Himes, Democrat of Connecticut. He's a ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, the top Democrat on that committee. Congressman Himes, I really appreciate you making time tonight. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Rachel.
I confess that I worried a lot about the legality of what it meant to be shutting down USAID. I worried about the false information and lies and the impact of that in terms of the ways they were describing what USAID is. I worried about the material impact of shutting down USAID programs that do good work and keep people alive. I, before today, had not yet let my brain go there, that we are inviting dictators and tyrannical regimes around the world to arrest and imprison people who are associated with USAID for the crime of working with the United States of America. The Guardian reporting today on this scale has put a real chill through me, and I wanted to get your reaction to it.
Yeah, you know, I mean, inside D.C. circles, there's hard power. That's the military, the battleships, the F-35s, the weapons, and there's soft power. Now, soft power is a little harder to understand. Soft power is persuasion. It's winning hearts and minds. But let me tell you a story to best illustrate how important soft power is. And the USAID is all about soft power. When I was a freshman, I think it was 2009, 2010, four-star Marine Corps General James Jones walks into my office in a cloud of lethality and testosterone because he is a United States Marine to his core. And he says to me, I need you to support the foreign aid budget and USAID, and let me tell you why. Because I used to have the most unbelievable weaponry you can imagine floating off the coast of Lebanon, and Hezbollah was beating me. Why? Because they were building hospitals for people. Because because they were running newspapers, because they were providing food. And he said, if you don't fully fund soft power, USAID, hearts and minds stuff, I'm going to lose a lot more Marines. So you couldn't have said it better. You know, if nothing else, when the worst people on the planet are giving you a standing ovation, it's worth asking exactly why that's true.
I'm worried also about the immediate danger to people who, again, their grave crime is having worked with the United States on programs that the U.S. Congress agreed to and the American people funded. I mean, The Guardian's reporting that some of these tyrannical governments around the world are now asking Elon Musk personally for information from USAID's files. Grant recipients, non-governmental organizations, individual journalists that have been operating in their country because they had some connection to USAID. I have to ask you, does Elon Musk have access to that kind of information? Does he have any authority to share it with other governments? Is there anything that can be done to prevent that eventuality?
Well, you know, given the impunity and the illegality with which Elon Musk and his merry band of 20-year-olds have been operating in D.C. with, the honest answer is I don't know, but I would certainly assume that they've got access to what they want. Now, a judge has said you don't get access to the payment system, and, you know, all kinds of judges, you know, a dozen plus of them are pushing back. But these are not people, certainly not Elon Musk, who respect the law or the truth. So, yeah, that is a very real danger. And, you know, it's not an accident, Rachel, that they went after USAID. If you ask most Americans what's the one part of the federal budget you would cut, they say foreign aid, because maybe they don't know that story about Jim Jones and how important it is to keeping security. Maybe preservation of democracy and decency abroad is an abstraction relative to the price of eggs. But what they are seeing right now, their country whose grandparents fought the Nazis, whose parents fought the Soviets, cutting and running from those people who are risking their lives to try to promote democracy in various places around the world. By the way, including Ukraine. You saw what I did today with President Trump and the Secretary of Defense, basically saying, oh man, Ukrainians shouldn't have wandered into this war anyway. They were always going to lose it. You know, the United States is cutting and running from the role that we have always played in the world, which was to stand for democracy and a better future for the world's people.
Congressman Jim Himes, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. Because of the Intelligence Committee and its remit, I know that a lot of what you know you can't talk about, but I'm going to keep asking you about this stuff because I'm really worried about some of these folks around the world and some of the hardest places to live in the world who are in real grave danger tonight because of what our government is doing. Thanks for being here tonight, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back. Stay with us. A bunch of different kinds out there now. There is a Ford F-150 Lightning. There's an electric version, an EV version of the Chevy Silverado. There's an EV version of the GMC Sierra. There's an EV version of the Dodge Ram. The company Rivian has a cute electric pickup truck that's called the R1T. Even the Hummer. The Hummer comes in a gigantic electric pickup configuration if you want to drive a Hummer. So, you know, you have a bunch of choices. If you want to buy one of those vehicles, you will have all the convenience and capacity and sort of swag that a pickup truck gets you without ever having to go to the gas station. Or you can buy a Tesla Cybertruck, which is meant to seem very different than all the other electric pickup truck options in the United States. And that is in large part because the Tesla Cybertruck is not supposed to be just tough like a pickup truck is. It's supposed to be super duper, like inhumanly tough. For example, the head of Tesla, a man you may have heard of named Elon Musk, he unveiled the Tesla Cybertruck. First time the whole world was getting a look at it. He unveiled it by regaling this whole big room of assembled journalists and Tesla superfans. They're all going crazy for everything he said. He regaled them with this story that one of the most amazing and distinguishing and totally unique things about his electric truck was that it was basically indestructible. He explained that Tesla, in its wisdom, had created an armored exoskeleton for the truck. What other truck has that? because it has this armored exoskeleton, basically nothing can harm this truck. He said it was literally bulletproof. And then he said he would show everybody just how indestructible, how impermeable, how undentable his magic truck was. How everything would just bounce off it, no matter what you threw at it. That was the big unveiling of the Tesla Cybertruck, and here's how that went.
Frank, could you try to break this glass, please? Yeah. Sure? Yeah. Oh my God. Well, maybe that was a little too hard.
Oh my effing God is what he says. Maybe that was a little too hard. The guy who threw the thing at the window, that's the chief designer at Tesla. This was the big rollout, the big armored glass rollout to show the whole world how nothing can break that glass. He throws the thing and the glass just breaks. And then the designer guy, Franz, he says, let me try again. He clearly has a lot of confidence in this vehicle, right? So he basically says to Elon Musk, let me try the other window.
Let's try that, right? Try that one, really? Okay. Yeah. Sure. Oh, man. It didn't go through. All right. Not bad. Room for improvement.
That was Elon Musk's big rollout of the unbreakable armored glass of his electric truck. And, you know, the truck has its fans, just like everything Mr. Musk does has its fans. But it has definitely had its share of problems and embarrassments. And, you know, frankly, from the very first seconds that it was introduced to the world, it has had a large share of not living up to the hype, especially the part about these trucks being unbreakable and indestructible and having this impermeable armored glass, demo Tesla armor glass. Oops. Well, now, as the top campaign donor to U.S. President Donald Trump, Elon Musk has apparently somehow convinced the United States government, specifically the United States Department of State, that the taxpayers of the United States of America should spend $400 million buying, quote, armored Tesla production units. The line item here appears to be for a $400 million taxpayer purchase of production units of armored Teslas. So since I think the only supposedly armored production vehicles Tesla makes are these hilarious trucks, this really appears to be the State Department announcing, putting in writing, that it's going to spend $400 million buying these paperweights.